All right, today going to be talking about how to use social media for action and organizing. The main platforms I'm going to talk about are Twitter and Facebook, but I did want to just include Instagram since I know a lot of our members use it. It's just admittedly not a source of my strength, so hopefully we can have a future video on how to use Instagram for the same purposes because it is very important. Just looking at some of the differences between the primary social media platforms. The big difference, arguably, is audience. Twitter is public unless you keep your account private, but most people have public accounts. Almost every major decision maker and politician has a public-facing account. In the district, all elected politicians cannot block you from their account, at least their official one. If they also have a personal one, that's different. And so it's a way to potentially try to get seen by those officials. Institutions like DC Public Schools, Washington Teachers Union also have official accounts. And then news media and reporters all are very active on Twitter. Facebook's a little different. Here it's colleagues. You can create closed groups so that you can just be talking to people that you work with or in the union with, or just have an affinity group with, but also, of course, friends and family as it was founded for. And then Instagram is also one where it's largely designed to be public, but you can also set it to private. Friends, family, but also young people are very active on Instagram. And our students are still very active on Instagram. So it's a potential avenue there to be interacting with our students, potentially. But as I said, I'm going to focus on Twitter and Facebook. Those are the two that I use and I'm comfortable with. And hopefully we can learn more about Instagram another time. To me, Twitter can be an action and outreach type of tool. Whereas Facebook, you can really use for community building and even organizing. With Twitter, you can make a tweet, you can retweet, which we'll talk about other people's tweets, you can like it, you can reply to it, you can also stream live video onto it. On Facebook, you can post, comment, make events, share, like, you can do live video, stories, have public and closed groups. There's a lot of functionality on Facebook. In Instagram, you can post images with captions, comment, like, and do stories. Stuff there, it's okay. So an original message in Twitter is called a tweet, but on Facebook it is a post. When you're looking at your own main page, kind of your home page, Twitter, they call it a feed. Facebook calls it a timeline. A reply to a tweet is just called a reply. If you're replying to your own message, we usually call it a thread, especially if you have multiple replies to your own message. On Facebook, it's called a comment. Unless you're then replying to a comment. It gets all very messy. If you want to maybe share someone else's content, on Twitter, it's called a retweet. On Facebook, it is just a share. And then your Twitter name is called a handle. And on Facebook, it would just be your name. Instagram also uses handle. So I'm going to focus on Facebook groups. So some of the basics on Facebook groups is that here you see the picture of the person who posted and their name. Facebook groups can give you little badges like new member, administrator, moderator, also be like conversation starter. And it shows you a little symbol that it's posted to the group. W2, we have a closed group. So that means that only the people in the group can see the posts, they can't be shared. That being said, we always want to remember with social media, anything can be screen captured. So you have to assume that what you're posting, it is possible that it gets out there. And of course, the larger the group, the more people might see the post. And that means the more people who can, talk about the post. So you do want to be careful with what you say. You don't want to use student names, personal names. Um, you want to focus usually on big picture issues. Um, and just be intentional with what you're posting. If you're going to say my school has no toilet paper, then you've got to be prepared to stand by that. And that not everyone will like the fact that you're quote unquote exposing the business possibly of the school, but sometimes we got to make a change, and that means making people uncomfortable. So it's not that you can't post things that are controversial. You just want to be intentional and know that like what you're posting, even in a closed group, could possibly be seen by someone who might not like that you're saying that. And, you just kind of have to be prepared for it. People can then like or respond kind of with a reaction like angry, happy, sad, loving, caring, thumbs up, angry, to show that they, usually kind of agree or upset about whatever you're posting. And then, of course, people can comment. I find that effective post, you speak your mind. So if you post a news story, you should give either a clip from it, like the most interesting thing you thought about it, or what you think the main takeaway is, so that people don't necessarily have to read the whole article in order to respond. Asking questions like this poster did is always an excellent way to solicit feedback and interactions and keep the group lively. You can also do like a poll. There's lots of options with Facebook posts. Using images, media, video, that's always a good way to get attention to your post. Again, just trying to keep interest up, keep people reading, informing them, starting conversations, getting to know each other. If your post you believe is really important and you want more people to see it, if you comment on it, and it'll go back up towards the top of the feed under what's known as new activity. So that's another way to try to get more interaction with a post is have more comments, and your comment will achieve the same result. You could tag people, so you can type in their name, and if they're in the closed group, it'll pop up. If you want them to see it or comment, make sure they know what's there, or maybe you're thanking them for something, or things like that. Also, one of the features that we're using in this closed group is that we have tags. And those tags, you can only do one tag per post, unfortunately, but it does allow there to then be a post topic section where you could then click on a topic like Q&A or COVID and reopening. We have COVID news because there's just so many COVID posts. We want to try to differentiate what's just DCPS oriented versus what is just national, interesting to know, good to know, to be informed. We have other ones like distance learning and Canvas, and we're going to keep, expanding tags. And if you have a post topic or tag idea, you're always welcome to share it with any of the admin moderators, and they can add it. So we could have like elementary, middle, high school, just so you could go to those post topics, click on it, and potentially see something that's immediately relevant to what you're looking for. There's also a search function at the top of the group page, so you can always search, and that's also probably even more effective way of diving right into whatever you're interested in finding. And the goal, is just to respond, interact with others, build community, get to know your colleagues. And one thing just to remember, especially in a closed group like this, we are colleagues and we want to assume best intentions. We're going to have different opinions and different ideas of how the union can and should operate, as well as teaching and learning. We're not a monolith. We have different ideas on tactics and how we phrase things. So as long as we're keeping things from not being personal, we're stating our opinions, we're of course allowed to engage in that healthy, robust discussion and disagree. But we should always kind of remember that we are, a union, and we should assume that we all have, at least for the most part, the same kind of common interests in what we're fighting for. So when you're using Facebook to organize for action, you have your personal timeline. That's, your friends and family and the people that you said you're friends with on Facebook, be it a colleague or a community member that you happen to know, or if you're really sticking to, this is just my friends and family from, high school, college, growing up, career, etc. Um, but you can still use it to organize. So it could be that you're just letting friends and family know about an issue that teachers are facing. Maybe they're not aware of what you face every day as an educator. It could be where you can make a call to action. You can just use it as a chance to get to know colleagues and fellow union members beyond the job. So if you do friend colleagues from work or people you've met through union activities, it's a chance to see, oh, they got that cute dog post. Like, you don't always have to talk shop. Or, oh, they really like to bicycle, and so they're into cycling and they're going all over town, and that's something that's really cool about them. Or, just they have a family and look at those adorable photos. So it's just a great chance to help build that community, communicate, build those one-on-one relationships, get to know each other better, within the network that you want to be a part of. In the group, you can interact with a broader network without having to be, personal friends with them. And potentially you might develop personal friendships, but you don't have to. And so they won't see your personal posts on your page unless, you let them. So we have our group, the closed group. Groups can be public or closed, where anyone could see what's posted on it, but maybe couldn't post themselves unless they joined, versus one where they can't see what's posted, it can't be shared. Sometimes schools create Facebook groups for their fellow members. We did that once at Woodsend. It didn't really take off, so we just kind of left it, but it is a potential option. Certainly, I know there's a really healthy HD Woodson alumni group, which many of our teachers are also a part of, so we can stay in touch with alumni, both near and distant, and just, maybe let them know sometimes if the school's having an event and we'd like them to come. It's just a great chance to really interact with other members of the community broader. You can also do common interests, right? There's a lot of advanced placement Facebook groups, some of them exceptionally large, sharing tips and tricks. And we could even consider as members creating elementary, middle, or high school groups that are just for that community if we think that's something that's useful. There's also movements, so like DC Mutual Aid is a great place, or you can help out fellow community members learn about issues community members are facing in DC. And there's just lots of options within that. So there are chances to build community, share information, quickly communicate, find solidarity, call to actions, amplify other actions, and there's just kind of limitless opportunities for how you can use it, and it's really just kind of up to you and how you want to interact with groups and how much you want to be, in them, or kind of limit how much you're exposed to them. So Twitter is my baby. I love Twitter. Probably spend way too much time on it. So with Twitter, when you're looking at a post, you can see here that you can choose like a symbol to represent you. So you can see the Washington Teachers Union, which I retweeted 16 hours ago. So a retweet, you can see here, you would just click this little button and then it shows up on your feed. So anyone who's following you sees what you just retweeted. You can also retweet with a comment. That usually improves your odds at showing up on other people's feeds. So if you really do want someone to see what you're retweeting and adding your own spin to it makes it even more likely that more people will see what you've written and what the post says. You can also like a post. On the right here, if you click this, that's a share button, and so it'll share it. You could potentially share the link to Facebook, you could share it over an email, you could share it in a text to friends. There's lots of options, or you can just copy a link and then paste the link anywhere you want. Then there's the reply button on the left, so you can reply to the tweet. Those will also show up on your feed, but only if someone's checking tweets and replies when they're looking at your page. So not everyone would necessarily see that unless they're really following you closely. And then they'd see your reply. Then you have kind of, so here we have this my own post. So you can see that I kind of messed with my name here to try to amplify the only one it's safe messaging. I personally put my name in my tweets. I stand by what I say, even when it's maybe not super nice, or even in my case includes swear words, which, you know, that's a personal choice. Maybe you don't want to use that. I didn't used to, but the past couple of years I've been extra angry, and I just find that you get more attention if you choose carefully, but that you do from time to time use a well-timed swear word. But again, personal preference. You can see here on my post, there's an additional button where you can see analytics. You can see how many people have liked it, seen it, interacted with it. Did they click on your name? So you can even kind of begin to see like what resonates with the people who are looking at you, and you might care or not care. It just kind of depends how much you're trying to focus on building up, you know, your own messaging and making sure it is getting out there and getting noticed, getting attention. If you reply to your own post, you create what's known as a thread. And if you keep replying to the replies, then what it'll do is it'll come up with a really nice list. And if someone clicks on the first post, they'll see all the other posts that you wrote in order. To create a thread, you don't keep replying to the first post. You would reply to the latest post you just did, and then it'll make a nice line of posts. It's not terribly difficult. And it can be really useful because it'll move your original post to the top of the feed, thereby getting it more likes. Usually as more people see it and interact with it. It also, you know, again, allows them to get a longer message, since Twitter does limit how many characters you can type. Twitter's also great for amplifying others' voices. So as they'll talk about later, thanks to another W2 member, Cody, you can find other W2 members or find other people with similar messages that you want to amplify and bring to your audience, the people following your tweets, by retweeting them and liking them. Some other things that you can do, something called like a tweet storm. I'd say that kind of it can look different ways. One is just everyone uses the same hashtag, and you try to just make it trend either in your region or even if you have bigger goals, you know, nationally. So like we have the only one it's safe hashtag, and we try to get all our members to use it. A tweet storm could also be that we're all going to tag the same person. So it could be like, oh, we're all going to tag Mayor Bowser at 1 p.m. so that suddenly she gets 200 notifications that people are tagging her and giving messages to her. Tweet storms, we've also done one where like the chancellor posted something, and then we had all our members go and reply to that post and just reply, and just flood it. And we call that a ratio, where instead of getting likes and retweets, instead that person is just getting a whole bunch of numbers over here in their comments section or their reply section, which usually indicates that people are not happy with the post. They have something to say about it. And again, anytime you get a reply, it would arguably show up in notifications for the chancellor. So it is possibly a chance for them to at least see, even if they decide not to read all those posts, or they're not, you know, a staff member's tasked with it or something, that they can still see the discontent, whether they like it or not. Notifications are pinging, and you can bet they have it set so that they can receive those notifications, because they always want to know what's going on. So they can't claim they never saw it. How carefully they read it, we can't, you know, make any promises about that. We don't know. But you do find that they'll try to do some type of performative response. So people are reading them, whether they admit to it or not, and they're seeing what's being said. And so the more voices, the more the intensity, usually the more you can communicate your opinions and your feelings. Other people you can tag are elected officials. Again, every elected official in the district has a Twitter handle, and they're not allowed to block you. So tweet them all you want. Don't be abusive. You don't need to call them names. But let your voice be heard, and you can be angry, and you can say what they're doing is wrong, and you can say they're ignoring us, and that, you know, lives are on the line, and that it's unacceptable, and that our students deserve better, right? We can say that directly to them. They are elected to serve us, whether you live in the district or not. You work for the district. You represent your students when you're teaching in that classroom. So you have every right to tag them, and they have no right to block you. If it's a personal account, that is different. So if they have 2 accounts, then politicians are allowed to block you on a personal account if they so choose, as long as they're not using that personal account for their official business. They have to have 2 accounts if they're doing that. Otherwise, they cannot block you. News networks and reporters in particular use Twitter. They find news on Twitter. They will DM you and ask you questions on Twitter. They will respond to things. They'll learn about events and actions. So, I mean, if you want things to be seen, you can use Twitter. Yep. So one thing that Cody shared with us, he couldn't be here today to share it in person, but he made these great slides. So all the remaining slides are from Cody, is using Twitter lists. Admittedly, this is not something that I do because I just like to let the whole feed and all 2,000 people I'm following just wash over me, just a ton of information. But I also spend way too much time on Twitter, and it's probably better to be organized. So Twitter has the option to make what's known as a list. Lists can make it easier so that if you're using Twitter both for personal and work purposes or political purposes, you could just kind of go to the spot where, like, okay, well, right now I want to go look and see what teachers are saying. And so you could go to a list and then find, you know, the W2 member list. You can make your own list. You can also subscribe to others, as Cody's going to point out. So Cody has created one with the DC State Board of Education. So you could go to Cody's page and find his lists, where you can then see, you know, who's in the list. So he has the State Board of Education, so you could go and click on that list and then just see what are our State Board of Education members up to without having to, like, search for them or find a new feed. When you click on it, then you'll just see everything that's been posted by that particular group. That can include retweets. So, yeah, so just you'd only see the messages that are coming out of the people on that list. And so if you know, you were like, well, I know right now there's a tweet storm and W2 members are retweeting each other, you could go to the list, just hit the retweet button a ton of times, and you'd participate in the action really quickly. You will be notified if you get added to a list. You, I believe, can decide whether or not you need to be on it. Admittedly, again, as I said, lists are not really my forte. So if you have future questions, we can always ask Cody. So you can always go to profiles and click lists and find other lists, and you can subscribe to as many lists as you want. And when you subscribe to it, then it'll be available for you. Yeah, so that's kind of it on lists. I know I didn't do as good a job as I should have presenting Cody's materials, but hopefully this was helpful, and we're gonna follow up with maybe more advanced trainings on how to, you know, do some more kinds of activities and actions using Twitter. I once did a, say, like 800 scheduled post budget kind of, I called it performance art, where every minute a different tweet went out. And I scheduled them for 2 weeks right before a budget vote. So there's kind of some intense stuff you can do too if you really decide you love Twitter as much as I love Twitter. All right, so thank you very much for your time, and appreciate your attention.